This is Brandon from the editor here. I tried to include a music section for this video, but unfortunately, no matter what I did, it just doesn't seem like the actual video file would properly show up in Vegas. Like I recorded it one way, it didn't work. Recorded it another way, it didn't work. Finally downloaded OBS to my laptop, recorded the video, tried to get it converted and everything, and still didn't show up properly. So I said, screw it, I'm just not including it here. And instead, what I'm going to do, I've uploaded the song that I finished to my SoundCloud, and I'm going to include a link to that song in the description. I will say that the compression of SoundCloud is terrible, so be warned about that. But it'll be there if you want to listen to it. Just get an idea of what my intentions are for the soundtrack, or just what I'm going for with the soundtrack. Either way, back to video me. What's up, guys? Reaper here, and welcome to my dev update for the code name for it is Project Solar System. The actual name of it, I've got a few ideas, but I'm not going to. It's a bit of a secret. This is just me giving an update about what I've been doing for like the past year. Because I've mentioned it a few times in streams, because it's like the main things I've been doing. Something I need to change though, and I guess you do get to see one of the names that I had before, or one of the names I had in mind. But let me see here. I'll just show you kind of what I have at the moment. I plan on changing a lot of these stages to something else. So I wanted to have like through like 5, maybe 6 stages for level 1, which is just Earth. And I want to go through, I want to change all of them, just because I was looking through some videos, at least remembering a video from Lost Relic Games, and one thing he's mentioned in it was creating just like a bunch of concept designs for level segments. And so I basically went and did that. I got a bunch of ideas, wrote them down, drew them out and everything. And I want to take those and use those more for the, just actually try to make a cohesive start to finish, rather than what it kind of was for at least the first few levels, or first few stages. And you can kind of see how this is denoted, but first few stages where it just feels like it's all over the place, and it really was, because I'm just making things up, which, you know, it is what it is, but I want to go back and kind of make it more deliberate. I've got a better idea of how I want each level to kind of look and be structured, so I think I'm going to utilize that. Fortunately, I have a lot of ideas to pull from now. I also want to change the progression and how things work, but that's a different story. So I'm going to kind of show what I have so far. There's no music right now, no sound effects, because I've been working on some music. I've been working on the soundtrack for it. I've got one song that's almost, I want to check it one more time, but it should be done. It's just me thinking about just me being very pedantic, you know, that's not the right word, but with my own song. I've got a lot of issues that I've been using GitHub issues. I've got a lot of things to work on, not just for the alpha, but in general. I kind of mentioned some of the things I have in mind, and you can see what the names I had before. I want to kind of change that. I do like this name, but I have a better one. So this is that's subject to change. That's what I'm going to say. So the 5th stage right now is just going to be the boss fight. It's going to be the next boss fight, but I'll just go over like stage 1. You can kind of see I've got the player character. I'm going to change the size of that again, but you got your player character. You got a few hazards. Your dash gives you invincibility frames, by the way. A bit of a slow-mo type thing. You can see I did some animation stuff. The player character was the first thing I animated. The first thing I did art for was a tile set, but the player character next, because it's important for scaling, so I figured it would be important to do that next. I think this one would be more important to show off. And I want to, yeah, there's a bit of wind here, which I don't have particle effects for, so that's why there's nothing happening right now, and it's kind of all over the place at the moment. But you can see, there's your method of attack. You got your orb. You can push it. You can pull it around. The pulling around thing is a new thing. As a new thing I've added for this game, and I'll show off how that works. I'll get more technical in a bit. I'm just kind of showing off the game itself right now, just some of the stuff I've worked on. So I'll get into the underlying systems and whatnot later. This room also needs to be changed because of how I've changed the hazards and how big they are and whatnot. It's weird because of the health bars and the size of the person, the hitbox. So let me pause this for a minute. You probably can't see it from here. I'll show you a bit more when I show off the actual art. So we'll go over the art. We'll go over I think we'll go over the systems next, and then we'll go over the art. That was a weird glitch. Huh. That is a very weird glitch. Oh. That's... I guess I need to fix that. Yeah, that's not normal. Okay. I will be making a new issue for that once this is over. But what I really wanted to show off was this, which took a win up this part. Now this is just a hard level. I didn't really need to change this because it's all over the place. There's a lot of ideas that came from a book here, but it's too much at once, and I think it just needs to be simplified. It's also lagging quite a lot, which is a little unfortunate. I want to do optimization stuff near the end. I mean, it's not like I haven't tried to make things optimized. It's just there's a lot going on here. In any case, this is one of the big things I worked on. It's like this is like the mid boss, which I also need to fix. Really, I just wanted to. Oh no, never mind. This actual stage thing, I think it's fine. It's just I fixed some minor part, changed the way the states work, and yeah, I guess I'll get into all that stuff. But yeah, this took me a while to figure out. All the animation's done and all that kind of stuff. And you might say this is kind of gung-ho before you even actually finish the main alpha part. Yeah. For me, it was like I wanted to make sure that when I was making stuff, it was based off of how the actual things worked and looked. So I wanted to make sure that when I was making stuff, that it was actually utilizing the animation of the moon. Which, to be fair, yeah, sure, my subject could change at some point, and that's always true. But I'm willing to change it. I really don't care. I just want to make sure I know what I'm doing at the very least before I get into it. Okay, so now to get into the actual structure of the game. So the game is broken up into levels and stages and rooms. So each level is a planet. In this case, the first level is Earth. Earth level is broken into multiple stages. 5-6 stages for the first level is what I'm planning on doing. And then each stage is broken into rooms. So, see, this is like the 5th room of the 4th stage. That's the main structure of it. And I've got a whole room situation, and I'll get into the programming aspect in a bit. Because I'm working on the player character. I've been working on the enemies and the moon and whatnot, and you see a whole bunch of stuff here. There's a lot of systems going on. I will get into that in a bit. So in terms of the actual structures, there's a few different systems going on. This is a lot of what I've been doing for like for this time. You might say like, oh, why is it taking so long? There's a lot of systems. I don't want to say systems architecture. That's very different to this. But there are a lot of stuff I've been working on. Trying to make things flexible and just flexible enough to where it actually is easily expanded upon. So I guess before I even go over the actual stage stuff, well, actually one of the things I did, because you might have seen I made this in Unity. What I did is I wanted to port most of that code over into Godot because it's still C#. I had to change most of it still. I want to make sure I tried to change as little as I had to. So one of the big things I did, you might see here, the Unity has its own object pooling namespace. Object pooling is sort of a system where the idea is that you take an object or a set of objects and you recycle them over and over again. Because, at least in Unity, creating an object and then destroying it repeatedly especially is very cost intensive for both the engine and the system. In Unity, they recommend that you spawn in a certain amount of objects that you might need and you recycle them. So each time the object kind of reaches whatever state they might be in to get deleted, they would instead go back into your object pool, and then later on they get reused back again. I want to redo that again because, especially for a game like Bullet Hell, a lot of projectiles going on or firing out at the same time constantly over a period of time, especially like some firing patterns. There's just a lot going on there. So having an object pooling system is very, very useful. So if you're not familiar with Godot, what you have right here is called a scene. Each scene is built upon a series of nodes. You have a parent node, essentially your root node for your scene, and then that acts as the parent node to all the nodes under it. So you have like a parent node, you have a parent node right here, you have a child node underneath it, and so that's just basic structure for each scene in Godot. And scenes are what makes up a lot of this stuff. So like this collection of nodes is a scene that I've called Moon Earth. This is like the Moon mid-boss. This is a collection of collection of nodes that makes up a scene that is the asteroid character, the asteroid enemy. And then you take these scenes and you instantiate them to create different enemies, in a sense. You don't designate which scene is which, in the sense that there is no setting it to a level scene. There's no specific enemy scene. It really is dependent on what is your root node and what you're using it for. It's like this is the root node here is just a basic node, the most basic node you can utilize. Whereas up here, basic node is called a character body 2D, which is essentially a physics object move with the script. But that's really what like the building block. Those are like the building blocks of Godot. I don't know if I'm explaining it very well. Watch somebody else's tutorial. They'll explain a lot better than I will. So what I tried to do, because I didn't want to redo a lot of my code, but I wanted to keep the object pooling system intact. So I had to recreate the underlying object pool namespace, or at least the underlying object pool system. So I've got like basically like this is the main one, just object pool.cs. This is my main object pooling script. I've essentially ripped it straight from Unity's namespace and whatnot. I took their interface, just recreated it, and then recreated as best I could the object pool. I mean, it works the same way as it does in Unity. I just don't know if this is probably the best way of doing it. Like, I don't know if I've made these methods as best as they could be, but at the very least, this is functionally the same as it is in Unity. And regardless, this is fine for now. This is more of an overtime type of thing. And I've mostly split all these up, so there's a lot going on here that really has just been over time. I haven't just sat down and just banged out a bunch of extension methods, which something that's not unique to C#, but something new to C#. Create extension methods that just allow you to denote a shared function within a class. So essentially, if I want, like this is a frequent one that I use a lot, like disable core, it's enable core. If I'm enabling a node or disabling a node, there is no actual function to disable nodes or enable nodes. So I've made it myself and made it as an extension method for my purposes. So that way I can just reuse that instead of having to recreate this server thing over and over again. So I've got a lot of this kind of stuff, especially for system methods and whatnot. There's a lot of extension methods going on. But now to actually get back into the primary systems, got the stage system. I mean, the really main thing here is, let's say, I need to change how some of this works as well, because one of the big, I didn't mean to open Uplay. So one of the main things and one of the main pitfalls that I have with my room's transition system, or transition system, is that there's only one extra room you can denote here. And I want to make it so that you can go have multiple different rooms count as one room functionally. It doesn't do that right now. So I want to fix that. And that's going to have to change around how that basically the room manager and the room goal can communicate with each other. But like one of the big systems I made though, and I'm going to open up another scene here. It's like a stage event system. Basically just creating a stage. Essentially it's all shared stage ID. They all correlate with stage event number 2. I have certain nodes that enable other nodes or disable other nodes and whatnot. And then conditions, the whole condition system that once again works off that stage ID system, and also they have their own IDs. Yeah, it's a lot of polymorphism, so it's a lot of stacking on top of each other, because unlike Unity, you can't attach multiple scripts to one node. So I have to make it so that I have to make a lot of more like base classes or interfaces, so that way the shared behavior is able to be carried over, and has resulted in a lot of kind of how these systems work. I'm not gonna get too into it right now, but that's like one of the main things I worked on. Kinda, I had to do some fixing of it, but this one was actually probably one of the fairly easier ones. One of the big things I had to do, and I still have to remake a little bit of it, is the bullet system. I mean, really, this is like 4.0 at this point, because I've added, I mean, it's the same one I've carried over since I first made it back in 2021 for like an old project of mine, like an old game test. And I've just fixed it over since then. I mean, the first system was just a series of methods just created that just did some calculations, which wasn't really that good at all. And also I didn't have any object pooling either. And I've just over time fixed it and updated it, and it's I mean, the pattern systems actually I think is pretty good. What I want to change is how the bullet movement works, which is a bit different. So this is really just an unused method right now, or unused class right now. Big thing is, it used to have a lot of weird base classes, abstract classes, and interfaces and whatnot, and it wasn't really, it's just too much. And I eventually managed to, after doing another rework of my system, kind of reduce it down to this, a couple of static methods for creating bullets, and then a nice pattern factory. This is factory method utilizing some interfaces, and then have these pattern dictionaries. I mean, really, this is the big one I use a lot. But yeah, what I want to fix, I don't know if before or after the alpha, is I want to go through and I want to change this whole script, because right now it's very, like, this is hard-coded type of stuff. I want to remove that. I don't like this, especially since I have another bullet I want to utilize for like the volcano hazard, that I can't do that because of this. So that needs to change. I want to move some of the stuff out of here. Some of the stuff shouldn't be here. It's doing too much. It's doing too much when it really shouldn't be. It's not as flexible as I want it to be for what I want it to do, especially for a game that's called Bullet Hell. I want to have more complex bullet patterns, and like, I know how I want to do that. I want to know how I want that to work, but it's not cohesive with this script right now. So I'm gonna need to fix that. I want to have this script be more like how the enemies work. I found this online and I forgot even how I found it, but they mentioned like a queue system for movement. So essentially you create a method and then you would put in a queue, but I like this whole system a lot. I took this and I built upon it for my enemy movement system. So what I have here is like a dual queue system. Instead of having one concurrent queue, we queue up methods to execute at a later time. Here I have two different queues. I have a function queue, and I have a movement queue. So the function queue is what actually you have to queue stuff into. You queue functions in your function queue, and then the function queue will be checked over a certain amount of time, every so often. And when it checks the function queue, it would dequeue the most recent function, and it would execute it to create a new movement, which is a vector 2. And then the movement queue would also be checked a certain amount of time or so often, and once it was checked, it would take the most recent movement and it would execute that for the enemy movement. Not to mention that what I also did was that kind of a lock system on the function queue. So it would take the most recent function that was utilized, and if it doesn't find a new function in the function queue, it would just reuse that previous function to make new movements. So what this allowed me to do was allowed me to make it so that I have this random mover script, because this one essentially is just an instance. This one executes once. This one executes over multiple periods of time. Like, this is really meant for enemies who just do a random movement. Like, this is their only movement is random. So this would only execute once. It would add in that, it would queue that one movement function, and then reuse that over and over again. However, for bosses, because they might have multiple different movements during the boss fight, depending on, their state, depending on what attack they're doing, stuff like that, then that movement queue, at least that function, is going to get cleared out. It's going to be replaced with something else. And so for the bosses, it actually does queue the movement function multiple times. Well, that's just my little, I'd say, optimization, kind of. Either way, that's a way of keeping it more flexible, so where I don't have to define the actual how things move in that main class, and I can just, I don't know, it's a more flexible system than just making a bunch of different movement scripts, and it allows me to do a lot more with this system. It's very early right now, so there's not much going on in the movement types area, but it's still, I want to make a very flexible system is kind of the main point. And getting into the actual bosses and whatnot, bosses, of course, usually have multiple states. Those states can vary with different, whatever they're doing, whether they're idle, whether they're attacking, doing X attack, Y attack, and whatnot, stuff like that. And so I want to make a very flexible boss state system. How do I define the states? How do I define how they transition between each other? How do I define how long they are? Stuff like that. I didn't want to define what those states do, just how I want them to transition between each other and what they are. And so for that, I thought about how flexible I can do it. I didn't want to write that into a script or anything like that. So what I did instead was I created a boss schema system. And what I want to do, as maybe eventually, is making it so that it's an actual schema. Because right now this is sort of a soft enforcement. Like, this is kind of how I want it to look, but it's not enforced. And I want to make sure that you don't have to worry about not doing it properly. It'll enforce it at base. But regardless, this is for the moon sub boss. and you can see what the states are. You can see how long they are. They have a little repeat thing where you can denote if you want the state to repeat in the loop. Because each of these, the whole thing is just an array. That's the whole thing. But each of these subarrays are a phase. So you have phase 1, you have phase 2. You can kind of see how they transition between each other. The length property, if it's null, just says that you have to determine when this changes. This can go on for as long as possible until you change it yourself. And I'll go into that in a bit. But essentially, like states like this are determined by how long the animation is. So if there would not be a definite length value, it would be dependent when the animation itself finishes or other factors. This is a little bit different. Regardless, it is an external factor that determines how long the state lasts, which is why the length is null. In terms of transitions, the actual transition system, I want it to be very basic. So I have a couple of main things here. So the actual state data, at least how that's defined, I have a few different, like there's a bunch of stuff like the actual length, you have the general state, you have an attack state, you have the ID. This is just for this right here. We can determine, say, hey, if I want to jump from this state all the way down to this state and skip what's in the middle for whatever reason, then I can say, hey, go to ID this, whatever this ID is, and it'll jump to that state, skip over the rest of these. That's kind of what this is for, what it would say you want to go to, and then this is telling you to go to destination this. And then this is, you want to skip that state, you want to repeat that state in the loop. This is a whole other thing, by the way. This is the JSON conversion, which I do a bit of I had to make a custom conversion system, kind of. It's me leveraging an element of C#, but it's a pretty useful pre conversion system. But regardless, the actual state transitioning happens in here. So my goal is I don't want to have to deal with the actual transitioning. So like my goal is so that I don't want in here these boss manager classes to rewrite constantly how to translate this type of thing, these things, how to transition between states. I don't want to have to redo all that. I want to have to define that in this boss manager class. So that's where this comes in. Aside from these things, which is, that's other stuff. Like this, all this kind of stuff is how these transition between states. This doesn't really work like how an actual enumerator works. Like if you know about C#, you can't really plug this into a for each loop. I'm gonna admit, this is supposed to be index 1. I really don't know why, but this is how I define it myself. So regardless, this is meant to be a for each loop anyways. It's meant to be manually used. It's just I wanted to define it by the methods of the enumerator, so that's why it's using that. Regardless, this handles the actual transition between states, so I don't have to worry about doing that over and over again. So the actual state transitioning is handled elsewhere, and then the boss manager class will define, well, this is really just transitioning between states as well, but in a more high level sense in terms of, all right, communication between different states, kind of overarching stuff like phases and whatnot. How transition between phases, and then actually denoting the length thing. It's a high level version of what this does, essentially. And then of course the actual states transitioning, the actual straight state stuff is defined elsewhere. So like how firing a boulder, which I know that didn't look like a boulder. That's on my list of art stuff to do, and we'll get into that in a bit. Like firing boulders, like creating mountains and stuff like that. All the state stuff, as you can see, with like movement, firing bullets and whatnot, all this stuff is defined. And I have these little things called state handlers, which define states that should be. So neutral. I want to change how this works, by the way. Like this does need to be there. This doesn't need to be there. The moon, these two we can remove. I remove this as well. See, all these three need to be removed. These two need to move up to general state, and these two can remain. I want to save attack state for bullets, specifically for bullet type stuff. And I'm going to save this for actual main states like slam and spinning attack, stuff like that. Regardless, essentially this is what gets activated during that state. So when that state's, when it matches the phase, either any phase or whatever phase it needs to be, if all these parameters match, it will enable all the nodes that are underneath here. And then when this state, if it doesn't match all whatever's in here, it will disable the nodes. It's a very flexible system. That's really what I wanted. So that way, in the future, making the Earth boss and then making future bosses, should be a lot easier to do that sort of thing. I wanted the goal of a lot of this stuff is to make it so that these basic systems are nailed down as early as possible. At least like the underlying systems, like if you know like how the game works, you know, there's some stuff that's gonna be flexible, of course, but I kind of want to build in enough flexibility into the system that a lot of changes can be made, and I don't have to dive into the code for that. That's kind of that was really my main goal, and so that's what a lot of this stuff is for. Regardless, that's kind of that main thing. And there's a few other systems that are in here too. Like I can keep going for a while. There's a lot of, I don't want to go into too much depth. If you have any questions, please let me know. Regardless, I think we should move into the art side. So in terms of the art side, I mean, this is really just a little bit of what I've done so far. So this is the first thing I made, is the tile map for the Earth. It's not super duper good, and there's still some edits I need to make. This stuff, I know it doesn't make any sense right now. I meant to be this more like stone, but I'm actually going to change this based on what I want for the last stage in the final boss area. So this is more like a free spot, honestly. The rest of the stuff is pretty okay. I'm actually fairly proud of it because I didn't really do pixel art before this. So for me, this is, you know, this is my first foray to pixel art, kind of. And honestly, it's not bad for what my purposes are. I wanted an overhead view, by the way. That was my intention. I wanted an overhead view because it's planet scale. Although I know the main character is going to be very small, it's still planet scale. It's still like the player flying above the surface kind of deal. So it's more of an overhead type of view rather than a close on the surface type of view, which is why the buildings look this small. And there's like tiny trees and whatnot. That's the idea anyways. So the next thing I did, because I wanted the player for scale, is the player character. So this is planet ORB1, which is just, or we can just call Orby. I had a lot of iterations for this. So initially, when I thought of the planet character, actually, let me open up the first one. So I know when I originally made this, I wanted a purple and blue color scheme. Like I wanted to kind of seem very weird and mystical, but also kind of spacey and whatnot. And this is really a color scheme that I associate with spacey. However, this is very basic and whatnot, and I didn't really like it that much. And I thought about other ideas, and I was making like a list of characters for scale. I was trying to make, because I wanted the player character to have a ring. I thought having a ring on the player character planet would make it feel more distinct, but also personally, I felt it would make it more interesting, at least to animate especially, because it gives a little something I can mess around with, rather than just having like a blob, which, you know, you can always mess around with, make it feel like it has personality. But I really wanted to have a little bit of its distinct element, plus having something to animate with. After watching a video about character animations and color schemes and whatnot, I decided, you know, I thought about different ideas. And I started messing around with a different player character and whatnot, and I ended up drew like a little line here and a little dot here as I was trying to draw the rings. And I looked at it for a minute and I realized, I was like, you know what? That looks interesting. That looks unique. Personally, it looks fun. And I thought about it and I realized, you know what? I want to animate that. I want to draw that. I want to animate that. That looks fun to deal with. Because the advantage for me, that's what I've been kind of struggling with I've been struggling with a bit of a block with the Earth boss. Didn't really have with the player character, because the player character is supposed to be this weird, not normal planet type of thing. So I could go a little bit crazy with the animation and just kind of make it off the wall and just do whatever I wanted to. Whereas I wanted to make it relatively normal with the moon and the Earth. So it's a little bit easier to animate the weird planet, if you will. But originally I did want it to be sideways, and I realized over time after drawing, I drew this was like the second iteration of it, kind of cleaned it up and made it a bit more purposeful. I still realized that I don't really know how to animate that sideways or whatnot. And eventually led me into the main iteration, which, I mean, this is a mildewed color scheme right here, but I still kept the purple and blue that I wanted, and they added a little bit more color in the top and the bottom part, but this is the main player character that I wanted. I'm going to change the idle animation here, but I'm going to show you a bit of the animations. I want to change this, and I want to make this like I want to make it more bouncy, kind of make it feel like this character's filled with energy, It's kind of a baby planet, so I want to make it feel a bit more energetic. And this is a little bit slow. I might keep the animation, change it a little bit to give it some personality, and then I want to add another bouncy idle animation to kind of give it more character. Regardless, this is a duplicate of this one. Like I made the walk right animation. There's a few animations here. I made the walk animation you kind of saw before. Want to give it a really goofy type of feel. Left, up, down. The slow animation here. What I mentioned before is how the player animation or the player hitbox is pretty small. I wanted a visual representation of the player hitbox on the character itself. Before it was like a separate object. You have the other character here, and then the actual hitbox right in the middle. And so when you activate your slow mode, which allows you to move slower, you can see it here. Because I have a bit of, it's kind of a heartbeat. Really supposed to be breathing, but I kind of screwed that up. Dash. This one took a long time to make. You have no idea how long it took me to deal with to actually figure out how to animate rotation like this. Especially for an animation that goes by so fast, it's so brief. It's a bit rough, but it is what it is. It was pretty fun. It was difficult, but it was fun. And the burst animation, kind of messed with that a little bit. The collapse, which is your pull-in move, or animation. This one takes a little long, even for, I just used this as the beginning of the stage, but even as the beginning of the stage animation, I felt like this was a little bit long, so I just want to take this first part of it, and I'll show you in a bit here. I just want to take this first part up to where it summons in the player character, and kind of cut it off right around. Yeah, I think this opening section is pretty good because I wanted the animations to correlate with each other, but I wanted the actual respawn animation to be a lot faster. So I made the respawn animation just relatively quick, super bouncy, because I didn't want to be a super long animation that made it so that people get annoyed by it. If you die a bunch, you have the super long animation going on. You're like, what can I hurry up and get back to the game? So I wanted to be quick, and this is just going from a stage. So stage complete. This one actually hasn't been used yet, but it's there. And then death animation. It took me a while to make this stuff, but this is like this is the first thing I animated. Not all of these. Most of them I made already, but this one is like the most recent one. This is the most recent one, but both the collapse and this animation were created at the same time. Yeah, stuff like the moon, which is the most recent thing I've been animating. But yeah, this is kind of what I've been working on as well. Most recent thing I've been working on right now, and I still need to finish. There's a lot of stuff that's missing here. Is the Earth boss. So the Earth character here. I've got a few animations. They correlate with the moons a little bit. Still not the same. Bit of a slower but heavier slam. So I wanted to hear a few different animations. I want to make a few more effects to this, or add a few more effects to this, add more effects to this one as well. And then this has no shading as well. We have a bare Earth. To try and take a while for me to check different parts of the planet, make sure I was kind of copying the shape of everything as best I could. This one, actually, it's fine. This is the most recent thing I've been working on. And there's like a few more minor things as well. The example, the asteroids. It's like the idle animation here, damage animation, spawning animation, which I need to change because it looks terrible, and the death animation. I have the room goal, which took a while to make as well. This one, it was fun, but it was hard. Actual active animation, activating, deactivating. I mean, the activating was this one's easy, but this one took a while. This one took a little while after I fixed it anyway. This is their orb thing. I had a lot of designs for this. This one actually probably went to the most redesigns, and even then it's probably not even finished yet. So I think the moon is your orb thing. Went to the most redesigns probably of everything else so far, because I wanted to make it feel like a captured moon. Like the Orby would bring in it would use its powers to capture a moon from some other location and use it to fight. It's kind of the idea of it. So I had made a lot of different iterations of different moon types, and most of them I wanted to feel kind of distinct, but also make it feel like a captured moon. That's a bit of a different. We wanted to have a bit of color difference as well, so that it'd still stand out through everything else. And it was also make something that's animatable. So it was fun to animate and easily animatable, kind of. And I had a lot of different iterations of this, but most of them were kind of This one was the closest one that I felt to what I wanted. It's just like it really felt like it was a chained up moon, but it didn't really feel good. It wasn't until I kind of changed perspective of it that's when I figured, well, even then it looked like this originally, but I had shortened out the side of the moon, changed the colors a little bit, get a bit softer, make it a bit lighter, so that way it would contrast with the colors of everything else. And this was a lot more of what I wanted. There's a few animations here, but this is a lot better. This is a lot more of really what I want. Regardless, what am I going to do next, essentially? So my goal right now is I want to go and finish this. So I want to finish the animations for this character, essentially. I need to finish that character will be encompass stage 5 or maybe stage 6 after I go through and redo everything, because I do want to, once I finish the earth boss, make all the attacks for it, everything, make all the states for it and whatnot, I'm gonna kind of designate that as a pre-alpha, and that'll be for like friends. I want to have them tested somewhat, but I'm gonna go back, I'm gonna redo pretty much the entirety of the first 3 stages, and then some parts stage 4. Make them feel more fluid, feel a little bit better, make it more cohesive, and then maybe even add a stage 6 to really make it so that I have the progression of knowledge and just make it feel more natural and have things progress between stages and how the player gets information and gets introduced to mechanics and whatnot. I think spreading that out, it's like trying to condense a bunch of information to like a few episodes of a season. To spread that season, I want to increase my episodes so that I can go into a bit more detail about each of the systems if it really makes sense. But regardless, I might add another stage. So there'd be at least 5 stages, if not a 6th stage. And the last stage is going to be the next boss, which is Earth. Regardless, making that Earth boss be stage 5, that'll be pre-alpha. I give some friends and whatnot to test. And then I'm going to go back, redo some stuff, add in a few more things that I wanted to have that I think makes sense. Because right now, I don't think it's fully publicly presentable right now. I'm showing you essentially in-depth footage, or in development footage, which is still, I don't know. Either way, it's not ready to give out to people yet, personally. And there's a lot of stuff I want to do with it before I actually let people try it out publicly. So that is my goal. And then after redoing some stages, reduce a couple things like the bullet movement system. I need to change the levels, and then I need to finish the sound effect. I need to finish the soundtrack, at least the few songs I have made for it, and then add the sound effects as well, so it really feels a bit more alive. It feels a bit more impactful. And then I think once all that's done, it'll probably be ready for an actual alpha demo release, and that might be somewhere at the end of January. Or even at the end of February, honestly, because still a lot of stuff I need to do. So that's my dev update for today. It's probably been all over the place, which, yeah, I didn't write a script, admittedly. And there's still a lot I've left out of here. So if you have any questions, let me know. But that's really my update for today. So this is kind of essentially, yes, this does exist. I've said it a lot. I've talked about it a lot. It does exist, and I have been working on it constantly. It's because there's a lot going on. I have not explained most of this stuff for a reason. It doesn't feel like there's a lot going on for me, but it's because I've been doing it for a while. There's a lot going on. At least showing people it that I know, and even programming stuff. It's just to go into depth with this would take like another hour. Even then, that would be assuming that people even want to hear that kind of thing. So I just haven't. If you want, let me know if you want me to keep doing these, or if you have any questions. And if there's enough questions, maybe I'll make another one of these. But either way, Alpha will come out when it comes out, and that's pretty much it.